Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and please welcome our guest today, Sam Playfair, Group Relationship Director at WillU Financial Services Group. Sam, hello and welcome.
Hello. Hi, Greg. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm okay, thank you. You've just had a baby, haven't you? Well, not you, of course, but your wife.
My wife has had a baby, 8 weeks ago.
Oh,
So a new world for me.
How's it all going?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, he's doing very well and growing very, very quickly, and my sleep is very, very bad.
Well, I'm sure that you're going to nurture him into an incredible partnerships person, right?
Probably. We'll think about that later.
Well, look, thank you for joining us. Particularly, you have just come from well, I was going to say you come from giving birth. You know what I mean. You haven't come from giving birth. You've come from having a newborn. So we very much appreciate your time, particularly given there will be a few sleepless nights.
Yes.
But perhaps hopefully we've got some coffee on the go and beside you.
Lots of that.
Pleasure. Perhaps starting with an overview and an introduction, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are, your background, and your current role, and a little bit more about WillU.
Absolutely. So essentially, my journey to WillU has not been a very straightforward in terms of the industry that we're in, and I'll come on to what WillU actually does. But essentially, we're in the financial services industry, and I've started on a very different route. I got a degree in biomedicine, started working at GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, moved into a startup that did have something to do with insurance, but essentially working is a tech company, essentially supplying some insurance to clients in airports and visa application centers. Really exciting business. COVID kind of upset that one. I've contracted for several companies, a luxury magazine in the sailing world, and a health and wellness online platform, and essentially have used my sales and relationship skills to kind of moving across different industries. Anyway, I found the guys at WillU in 2022. That's when I started working here. And came on as sales director, and essentially started at the end of 2022. And just in a nutshell, if I explain what WillU Group actually do, we are a consolidator of financial services and some HR services as well. So what that means is when a client company comes to us, we don't just look after one service. So they'll have various needs across insurance for businesses, protections for businesses, and then life insurance for directors and owners of companies, healthcare, whether that's a corporate policy for teams of businesses or for individuals, workplace pensions, investment, and across the wills and LPAs trusts front. So, and there's a final part of the business, which is the FX arm. So we look after international payments, and this all sits under one roof, which is WillU Financial Group. And my role in the business was sales, wholly sales before, attending lots of events, speaking to lots of potential clients and bringing them into the business. And about almost a year ago, I transitioned to a relationships role. So I'm a group relationships director now, and I essentially work with every single department within the company and make sure that any client that they're dealing with is, first of all, has an amazing experience in the company and knows what we do, essentially. It's very easy for each department to focus only on what they do. And my role is to make sure that they understand that if they do need help with other services, we can do that for them. And the consolidation piece means they don't need to deal with 4 or 5 different brokers or insurers or whoever they're dealing with. They just deal with everything in one place. And we've developed in this last year, or launched within this last year, our WillU app, which we call WillU Wallet. And all of these services sit in one place, along with a free rewards platform, discounts off high street brands that we give for free to all of our clients. And that's essentially what the group offering is. And I spend a lot of my time explaining what I just said to potential clients and existing clients. And I also work with, in a partnership sense, with several accountancy firms and third-party HR companies that will deal with sort of SMEs that will essentially need these services. And we have a partnership, which means they will send them over to us, and we can do likewise with their services. So there are there's lots of different ways in which I'm working with companies under the WillU Financial Group. But yeah, that's just some of them.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I've got to ask, before we come on to the next kind of principal question, Dr. Playfair has quite a ring to it. Why didn't you pursue a career in biomedical sciences, and how did you make that decision to move into more of a commercial set of roles?
So actually, my dad is a GP himself, so there is a Playfair. But essentially, I was studying my first year at university was in medicine.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So I switched. I very much enjoyed university, and I ended up not quite knowing what I wanted to do and didn't really have too much direction. I just knew I need to get a degree, and this one, Dad does this, so I'll do what he does. And essentially, it turned out to be the wrong subject for me, and I switched to biomedicine, which turned out to be a hell of a lot harder than medicine.
Oh, really?
A lot more technical, and would lead eventually to a job playing with, essentially bodily fluids, including blood and the other ones. And it seemed like the best job for me after doing 2 years. Well, 2 years into the degree, I decided that I'm going to finish the degree and then take that very good-looking degree and work in something that I'm actually good at, which turned out to be sales. And that first role at GSK kind of solidified that, I need to be in the sales and relationships. Doesn't really matter what the industry is. That's where my skill set is. And using a pipette and sitting in the basement of a hospital was maybe not the dream career for me.
No, but I didn't know that about you. Thank you for sharing that. Gosh, what you find out on these podcasts, eh? And I really want to ask, because I know that our listeners will be keen to hear, how have you seen WillU's approach change since you joined in 2022 when it comes to creating partnerships? And what does a Gold Star partnership look like for you?
So I think, as I said, only about a year ago, I switched to the relationships director role. That was a major pivot point for everyone in the business, but me especially, where we looked at our book of clients that's been built up. The directors set the company up, I think, 8 years ago now. There are hundreds and hundreds of clients. They're companies. 90% of them are companies, but we have individual clients as well. They all have these various different businesses, but most of them will need some sort of business insurance. Most directors in that will need to have some sort of protection in place. If they have a private healthcare, they should be putting that through the business. They may not be doing that. You can see how taking different products and making sure that every single client is aware that they should be doing that with us through their business in the right way, with trust built into it. The pivot was when we realized as a company, it isn't all about just filling the hopper up with new business, which is what I was getting more and more companies in. And we would go and ask them what they needed, and we'd go and give them that service. And they would have a relationship, but it would kind of be secondary to just making sure they renew next year. The pivot and the change that has changed since I've been here, I guess, is solely focusing on existing clients and partnerships, that we can make sure that we grow the relationship that we already have with them across several services. And that's change, and that's the relationships role. And we're building a whole relationships management department that will essentially go out and entertain and make our clients happy and make sure they understand what more the extra help that we can be giving them. So yeah, that's probably the biggest change since I've started, I've noticed.
Thank you. I mean, that makes so much sense. I mean, I don't have the stats to hand, but there's so many of them which talk about how the cost of acquiring a new customer is so much more than the cost of actually nurturing the relationship with an existing client and really growing that. So that makes complete sense. I mean, you've got such a great reputation anyway for incredible client service. So that's wonderful to hear that there's even, much more of a focus on existing clients rather than new ones. And it's very refreshing to hear. And I think there's kind of quite a big shift actually from businesses who are investing more time, resources and money into cultivating those existing relationships because they're there, which makes absolute sense.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess continuing looking at partnerships, if we may, for a little bit longer, because after all, they are the lifeblood of businesses. What's your, Sam Playfair's, definition of a business partnership? And how do you go about creating, nurturing and growing them? Kind of linked this question, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my definition of a great partnership would just be, as simply put as possible, a completely mutually beneficial relationship. If one party in the partnership is getting a lot bigger benefit than the other party, then it's not a proper partnership. I think there needs to be a balance, and there are lots and lots of brokers that essentially do what WillU does in a sort of one of the divisions, let's say insurance, for example, that will approach their relationships, their partnerships, their clients exactly like that. And they'll just say, right, we need to get as many sales as possible. They have a sales team with targets to hit. And it's all about getting that new business to get them through the door, sign the documents, and then they forget about it. And then it comes to renewal next year. And it's all about getting the highest amount of revenue from each client. And that is absolutely not what we're trying to do at WillU at all. With our clients, we are incentivized massively to ensure we're driving down prices for clients. We're sort of making sure they get the absolute best gold-plated customer service through us and through our providers, such as insurers or pension providers, whatever it is. And if we lose a client because of bad service or because they don't think that they can trust us with whatever, whether it's a renewal cost that's gone up, if they don't think they can trust us, then we might lose them across 5 or 6 different businesses, services. So we're super incentivized to do a great job there. So there's a long way of saying, I think we need to benefit us and we need to benefit our partner and the clients to make it a sort of long relationship. And trust is the foundation of everything we do. Without trust, we don't have anything. We're just another broker that's trying to make a quick buck, and there's no future there. There's no sort of stability in that long-term relationship. Every single client that we bring in, we hope to maintain a relationship with and build that trust even over a span of multiple years, if not decades. And it's all through great service and just it's all about relationships, really. It's a lot about relationships.
Oh, don't get me started on trust. I think of trust as the cornerstone for any relationship, whether it's personal or professional, whatever it might be, because unless you have trust, it's very difficult to move forward in an open way. With trust, you're able to say, actually, Sam, I'm not quite sure I agree with this direction that we're going in, or actually, Sam, I don't quite, that's not quite what I was looking for, but trusting that, that you're going to respond in the right way. And I think it's particularly as British people, we can be very difficult. We're not always necessarily considered to be as open and transparent as perhaps other cultures. and therefore that can, I think, prohibit the existence of trust from the very beginning. So it's really wonderful that you kind of touch on that actually, you know, I think, and if you agree, that trust has to be the foundation and cornerstone of any relationship.
Definitely. I think exactly, not just business wise, right?
Yep.
You can't have a great marriage without complete and utter trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, marriage in personal life, marriage in business life, you know, it is a, you know, yeah, it has to be there, because otherwise you can't be and say and be and feel who you truly are.
And I think going back to, yeah, so what I would say is a great partnership is you can't just magic up trust. Trust has to be,
no.
and that happens over time. And that's why I say we aim to be with our clients, or have our clients and our partners with us over several years, and hopefully forever, because that trust only gets stronger each year when we prove ourselves that we are trustworthy, and likewise they prove themselves to be a trustworthy and fantastic client or partner. So it's a two-way street, but you know, you give a lot and you get a lot. That's how it works.
You get out what you put in, absolutely. And it takes time. I mean, I think of a sale as an individual transaction, whereas I think of a partnership as a genuine two-way, long-term, fruitful, sustainable, beneficial, all of the above entity.
Absolutely. And then you get recommendations, and then that grows organically into several, you know, more relationships that start from an even better place than it came when you're going in cold. So yeah,
I mean, there's a number of metaphors I think that we could draw on, but you know, it's kind of that whole little, you know, that little seed. The more that you water it, the more it blooms, and it more, you know. So
sure.
There's going to be more metaphors coming out of this podcast, I know. So now coming on to, so for all the budding partnerships and client relationship people listening, and arguably those who started a career in medicine, what advice would you give to your younger self starting out? Perhaps the do's and the don'ts of partnership creation and development and approach to the commercial world.
So I think communication has to be a key thing. Focus on that, and your relationships, and that is really the priority. If you can build fantastic relationships where there is trust involved, really high levels of trust, the rest, as long as you are working with a fantastic product and your team and your company that you're working with is providing a good service, your role as a partnerships or relationship or a sales, or you know, that those sort of roles, you need to be presenting the company in a fantastic way. But it is all about that relationship and building trust. And I would say my advice to myself would be, don't rush it. And that's a don't rush it, because it takes time to do that, and you need to prove yourself. It's too easy to, you know, focus on maybe your personal within your company's targets, end of year, end of month, end of week, whatever it is. If you try and focus on that too much, you can rush conversations and rush relationships and scare potentially fantastic partners away, because you're becoming pushy, or you're forcing what your company wants over what the mutual sort of benefit of working together is. And really it should be something where you can help, and they can help you at the same time. So don't rush it. And yeah, what would I say as a do? I would say, focus on your own relationship and communication skills, so that you can present an amazing, present the client or the partner an amazing view of the business. You know, have a fantastic story to tell, and to make sure that they can understand it, and resell or talk to other businesses about how fantastic you are. As long as someone else understands what you do and you're doing a good job, then a lot of the work can do itself.
I think what you mentioned there, amongst a number of other brilliant pieces, was just don't rush it. I think all of us, when we started out in our career, well, not all of us, but many of us wanted to kind of make a big bang and you know, look at me and I'm great and I'm this and I'm going to make my mark on the world. But I think, as you say, it's just not rushing it, taking time, because you know there's a long time. Life is long.
Yeah. The caveat to that is you need to have enough conversations at the same time. If
Yeah.
you're too slow because you're not rushing it and you don't have enough conversations, you're not going to get anywhere and you're not doing a great job. But if you have enough, if you're keeping busy enough to be interacting with a lot of companies and a lot of individuals and whoever you need to be targeting to speak to, and you don't rush it and you take your time and you do deal with quality, not quantity, then it would only take a few months from point zero to be doing a good job, because there's enough there that something will drop and something will develop into a promising relationship or partnership.
Oh, we talk about, I couldn't agree more. I find that we talk about how we explore every conversation, we say yes to every opportunity, and you don't know where one conversation may not lead, and it may not lead anywhere straight away. It may not lead anywhere in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, but at some point in the future, it often will come to something. And if you kind of nurture it, not with the intention of getting something out of it straight away, then it can often be quite beautiful where it ends up.
Absolutely. And it's always an amazing feeling to see an email or a call from someone that you maybe had a meeting with months and months ago who said, oh, actually, now we've made a decision.
Yeah.
You gave us time to discuss this internally, or, you know, this has changed in the business. We're ready now. And you think,
Yeah.
fantastic. I didn't push them, but they've come because they've realized how good our product was.
One of the things I was taught quite early on is that you just don't know what other people's agendas are. It may be that, as you say, they might not have a requirement for what you're offering right now. They might not have capacity for the conversation right now. But if you approach it in the right way, as you say, you know, they'll often come back and say, actually, now is a good time, but without pushing it, just gently nurturing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, just on that, and this isn't part of the questions, but I'm quite keen, kind of links in before our final question. How do you deal with conflict when it comes to partnerships and client relationships? And conflict doesn't necessarily need to be like a big bang. It can just be a minor disagreement.
I think, well, we have our own, at WillU, we have our own company values, and sort of a company policy, I guess, is to make sure that there is a limit to what we will put up with, in terms of, if we think that we're dealing with a company that is completely against our values, we will end up saying, no, we don't need this. We don't need we don't need their business. We've got hundreds and hundreds, we've got thousands of clients. We don't need that one more just because it's a bit of revenue, or, you know, the partnership has historically been better. If things change and it's against our values, then we need to know when to draw the line, and that's difficult, but sometimes you have to make the call. If there are minor conflicts, for me, I think everyone can be far too opinionated sometimes, and sometimes it is just business, and just, you don't like someone's particular mannerisms, or they operate their business in a different way than you, but it still sits within those general, like, good values. I think you have to just accept that businesses operate differently, and this is a great relationship other than that disagreement. So you work on that, and the only way to do that is to communicate. Don't sort of bitch and moan silently and operate, you know, through clenched teeth. Be open, polite, and honest about the disagreement or the conflict, and make sure that if it is possible, you can come out the other side both smiling and say, oh, you know, all I needed was a clear and open conversation. We understand each other now. We can carry on, or we can both say, do you know what? Off we go. It's not working out. But unless you have the conversation and talk about the problems, again, we're going back to marriage and friendships and parenthood, which I'm not an expert on yet. And communication is everything. You have to talk about stuff to sort of develop and grow and become better.
I think so. No, thank you for sharing that. I think particularly, as we mentioned just before recording, that as British people, we're often not great at actually getting things out into the open or on the table. But my view is that I think conflict, and my co-founder Jen would agree that conflict is actually, it's a very underrepresented, misunderstood, slightly abused emotion, that actually conflict can, used in the right way, when it gets things out in the open and onto the table, is the best possible thing, because it results in people just sharing exactly how they feel, and being even more honest, which often, I think, once the conflict has occurred, then parties often walk away stronger because they feel closer to each other.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I think so, but I'm not going to break out into song. Well, look, coming on to our last question, if I may, just to round us off. Thoroughly enjoyed this, Sam. What does the future hold when it comes to creating partnerships with each other, and what do you see, if anything, that you and WillU will be doing differently?
So I think more and more of our focus as a business is going to be around that consolidation piece. That is our USP, and we'll still be driving new business and sales and operating like that. But we will definitely focus on better servicing our existing client base, and we will do that. I think this year, there's been a massive push and target towards more partnerships that are mutually beneficial, in terms of, with not exclusively, but a lot of accountancy firms and third-party HR companies that have a lot of clients themselves that need our services and can't do them themselves. That is a big focus for us, and we have a much more sort of strategic system, I guess, when it comes to, when we're dealing with a client that has a certain need, we will address that and make sure they're super happy with that. And then there's a bit more of a relationship focused route for them to take through the company, in terms of whether they have a will in place, and whether they have a life insurance policy, or, and there's a bit of a more of a direction for clients, so it's a bit less of a here are 6 different divisions that we operate, and it can be a bit confusing. It's much more, relationship managers, and our team of relationship managers will hold clients' hands through that process, and I think it's really exciting, because we've already seen a massive increase in the amount of business we're doing, and only positive comments so far. So yeah, the future is very bright for WillU. I think eventually we'll have to grow significantly as a team, because there's so many clients that are very happy with us, and they're recommending, and it's sort of organic growth rather than the sort of what we used to have to do, which was all sort of going and speaking face to face with clients. Now that we're getting a lot of referrals, but the partnership side of it is so important for us.
We've known you for a good few years now, and you've been a wonderful supporter of ours for almost from the very beginning, nearly 5 years ago. And since you joined in 2022, we've seen the group continue to go from strength to strength, and it's very clear that you focus very much on your existing clients, what they want, their objectives, their goals, and then as you say, you provide the relevant solutions based on that, which call us old-fashioned, we think is good business, simply good partnerships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the app as well is another thing I should mention about the future, because it's quite unique in what we're offering, and it's an HR director's dream, because it allows us to give our clients a tool which is free. We don't charge any extra for it, and they can then demonstrate the services that they're giving their staff, their employees, in a really nice packaged way, whether that's a workplace pension, health insurance, death in service cover, rewards platform, and the whole of the rest of the suite that we offer. So that's a big focus and drive for us, and we've got a whole team sort of doing onboarding and introductions to it. So it's a really exciting time.
We can't wait to see what you continue to achieve throughout 2025. You've done some incredible things in a very short period of time, and perhaps you can come back and join us. Maybe a year's time we can reflect on the last year. But Sam Playfair from WillU Group just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us on Game Set Matchup. Some brilliant tips and advice as always, and we're wishing you the very best for 2025, not 2025, and many, many, many years beyond.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Take care. All the best.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need-to-knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.